when wealth and blessing were really meant for the whole community. Consider the stories both of Abraham and of Joseph. In the First Testament, when those stories are told, blessing goes with the whole people. The gifts that God gives are for the whole community. And we see that lived out in a couple of different ways in the Abraham and Joseph stories. In the Abraham story, there's a point where there's a discussion about whether or not maybe they should separate Lot and Abraham from one another because of the great abundance that they have. Maybe it would be easier if they split and went their separate ways, and Lot looks down into the fertile valley and says, we'll go that way, and you can go the other way, up into the hills, up into the land that doesn't look nearly so good. Now, we would expect that Lot would be the one who would flourish, but instead it's Abraham and Abraham's family that flourishes. Lot, as you remember, gets into a little bit of trouble, separate from the blessing that is to Abraham, that is for the community. The same thing goes for the story of Joseph. When Joseph is with his family and his brothers early in the story, while there's tension between Joseph and the brothers that make for the good story, we know that things are okay. When they fake Joseph's death, separate themselves from Joseph, and Joseph is taken off into Egypt, things don't go so well at home. And wherever Joseph is, things seem to be working out okay, even in the midst of great difficulty that Joseph experiences. He ends up second in command in all of Egypt, the right hand of Pharaoh, in control of all of Pharaoh's wealth and assets. And it's not until the brothers are reunited, it's not until Joseph's family is put back together in its right order, that the blessing returns to the whole family. And Joseph is the vehicle. The wealth, the power, the affluence that he comes in contact with becomes a vehicle for blessing others. We see that story lived out in other ways as well. I think about a sort of negative telling of the story that Luke gives us in chapter 16, a rich man and Lazarus. Lazarus begs at the gate of the rich man at the corner of his private community. The rich man no doubt has gone by and seen Lazarus, and he has averted his eyes. Lazarus is described kind of disgustingly. You'll remember the dogs come and lick his sores, short of leprosy. That's about as unclean a telling of an individual's life as we're going to hear in the time of Jesus. And he would long, Lazarus would long to have just the scraps of bread that are thrown under the table, the bread that's used as napkin for the rich man and his family at table, that goes to the dog as scraps. Lazarus would love to have just those scraps. And of course, the story as Jesus tells it, there's a great reversal. They die, and it's the poor one, the beggar, who's in the bosom of Abraham, and it's the rich man who is separated in a place of great anguish, and a chasm exists between the two, and the rich man's a little slow to get this. He's a little slow on the uptake, you know. He suggests that Lazarus should come and dip his finger in water and cool his tongue, because the rich man is suffering, and Abram says, you know, you had your shot. And now it's Lazarus's turn. Suggests something about the nature of the relationship, and that this man missed his opportunity perhaps to improve Lazarus's life on earth. Told more poignantly perhaps, and makes us much more uncomfortable in Matthew's Gospel in the 25th chapter, when that relationship is spelled out for us. You remember there's a separation of the sheep and the goats, and it's the ones on Jesus' right, the ones who he looks to and says, "Blessed are you who, when I was hungry, gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was sick, you took care of me. When I was in prison, you visited me." And folks are looking at Jesus saying, well, when did we ever see you like that? And Jesus says, when you did it to the least of these, you did it unto me. The resources of the community, blessing, caring, nurturing those who are without. And then that bitey part of the story, the left hand, the goats, Jesus says, you know, you didn't feed me when I was hungry. You didn't give me something to drink when I was thirsty. You didn't take care of me when I was sick. You didn't visit me when I was in prison. You are forever separate from the loving presence of God. And folks are looking at Jesus saying, when did we ever see you that way? Surely if we had known it was you. The real test, of course, is seeing the face of Jesus in every person whom we encounter, persons of need and otherwise. Told positively, the book of Acts in the 2nd chapter and again in the 4th, and sort of bridging overall in the text, a notion that folks take the resources they've gained by the transformation of the Spirit. They're able to bring them together so that no one has any need. That's the power of the working of the gospel in the community according to the book of Acts. The wealth, the gifts given by God for us to share with others. We remember that in the same way the land would vomit out Israel if they didn't fulfill their vocation to care for it, so too the prophets would rail against Israel for its mistreatment of the poor, for its failure to extend the blessings of wealth and prosperity to the lowest segments of the economy and the community, selling the poor for a pair of sandals, says Amos. These are the things that make God angry and cause what will become Israel's great downfall and exodus from the promised land. We're reminded of those stories. Even Mary at the beginning of the book of Luke, as she sings her song about what Jesus' ministry will be about, says that he has sent the rich away empty, but filled the hungry with good things. Jesus talks about the first being last and vice versa. Nature of the relationship, a great reversal for those who have been left out, because it's God's intention that no one be left out. And when we're talking about a relationship to the poor now, we're not really just talking about writing a check, are we? Difficult question. You know, do we know the names of the people whom we serve in the name of Jesus? We see the person at the top of the highway exit with their sign. We've driven by the person living under the bridge at the overpass. Maybe we've been at the soup kitchen and served the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and passed out the bread that they can take with them. But have we learned their names? Have we made ourselves vulnerable to be in relationship with them beyond simply a handout? Have we as a community taken seriously our task to share the blessings that transform life? That's a critical question. The last piece of relationship I want to touch on for today's session has to do with one we mentioned in our first session, which was that we are stewards of the mysteries of grace, that we in some way are the keepers of the gospel message. That's how Paul in 1 Corinthians 4 says it. It's how the author of 1 Peter in 4:10 says it. That these sacred mysteries have been entrusted to us, this incredible good news about God's unending, no holds barred, unconditional love for us and all of creation. This good news, this story that we're told by the Gospel of John, that Jesus comes to us not for condemnation but for salvation. This good news has been given to us to share with others. The difficult question is, how are we doing with that? How are we engaging with others in relationships that help them to know and experience and realize and come to understand for themselves the fullness of God's great love and compassion for them, that they too might live in wholeness and completeness? These are the things that God calls us to. Challenging, difficult things, but things ultimately that lead to the healing and wholeness of the world in which we live.